were unfactual, and we should instead, or were not truthful, and we should make moral system which are based on the truth. For example, our subjective experience, the way we view the world is truthful to ourselves. And this is also something Nietzsche often told. There is this quote where he says, "There are no facts, there are only interpretations of the world." And this relates to that idea in the sense that the subjective experience that we encounter with each day it's true to ourselves, and based on that, only based on that can we create a sustainable moral value system that is functioning for ourselves. He didn't mean that. That's why the whole concept of Übermensch arised. And it is still, I'm not saying that is the most beneficial way to create a moral system, but that is I think that is the best that we have for now.
So a lot of what you're saying, I really resonate. The way you say that is the best we have for now. Like I view us as finite creatures, meaning that we don't have access to everything. Like we have limited knowledge in that. And I look at Christianity. It was functional. It provided meaning for people. And science came along and it provided a function in a different way, like how the matter in our world interacts, and it was functional, and that allows us to make predictions. But I think you also said something I believe, that it doesn't provide meaning, though. The scientific method doesn't touch on meaning, and so the Christian worldview started to fall because there was a new way to look at the world that provided like material function, but it conflicted with the framework in which they found meaning in the Christian God. But I think when I left Christianity, I found it too many illogical things, too many fact claims that I couldn't find evidence for, but I didn't reject what Christianity was pointing towards, what it was trying to achieve, like the point of the object it was looking towards. I'm sorry, but do you think he was in this work? Do you think in this idea of his, do you think that he was arguing that it's definitely not true, or because he's so nuanced, like that you can just quote God is dead and it seems like a really flat, like hard claim, but when you read it in its context, it's just like that is not a simple idea he's coming to. And then I want to add one more thing, and then I'll shut up. You said that you don't believe that Nietzsche was an atheist, but you also believe that he was saying that Christianity was unfactual. I think that I'm confused. This is beyond my myself. Do you think that? Are you saying that he wasn't an atheist, but he also was arguing that God isn't real? There's no God?
Oh,
yeah.
If I can,
Yeah, go
Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, I'll give me a second. So I didn't say that Nietzsche wasn't an atheist. I'm saying that Nietzsche wasn't just your casual atheist who makes proclamation like God doesn't exist, because he is much, like you said, he's extremely nuanced, like extremely complex person. His works are like, when you read between the lines, there is a lot more nuance to it than you might think. It is not as simple as saying, look, we are the it's not as simple as, for example, how the Nazis put it, because Nazis, whether you like it or not, used Nietzsche's work to justify their tendencies for evil, as I consider it. So like they used they oversimplified Nietzsche's work and tried to justify their domination whatsoever. So, but if Nietzsche were there to see that, he would definitely condemn it. So my point being that Nietzsche is extremely nuanced. And I'm not saying that Nietzsche is an atheist. I'm saying that he's not just your casual atheist who says that God doesn't exist. It's more complicated than it seems, because a normal atheist wouldn't say that Christianity was a functional religion. Christianity provided values and meanings. They wouldn't say anything. I don't think they would say anything positive about Christianity. But Nietzsche knew that the destruction of Christian beliefs through the scientific method was not something to be celebrated. It created a problem. It created a problem, and we needed to solve it. And that's what he devoted his the rest of his life to, which he called the re-evaluation or the transvaluation of all values. And the closest he came to that conclusion was the Ubermensch, one who creates his own values. And a lot of his work is still incomplete. And in his last work, I remember, The Will to Power, he talks about how power is the core motive of every human being, and even that was denied by himself. There is this documentary which shows Nietzsche, which shows in that Nietzsche's Will to Power, the first draft, he writes a shopping list over the scribbled words, right? So that itself kind of tells us that Nietzsche wasn't too crazy about this work. So it's like it's much more nuanced than you think. But I'm saying that Nietzsche was an atheist, but there is a little bit more complexity to it.
I think what he's trying to get at is yes, Nietzsche was an atheist, but it had a different term back then, because atheism itself, as used to define our ways to say we disbelief in God claims. First off, that is relativistically true in terms of just the past 50 years. But to take it on as a personal thing too, to say just all God claims general, or to believe that the existence of God isn't there, is actually only since around like late 1800s. Before then, it was used in other ways, even back in Greek times, but not in the ways that we use it. So I think that's kind of where that comes in. I also think kind of where Frederick is at is you're at that age of enlightenment where people are starting to get a hold of things like Immanuel Kant and Descartes and Voltaire, and they're starting to actually grasp these concepts. Before, information didn't travel around the world as fast, and so it took a while, and so you'd have philosophers in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, and finally in the 1800s. And now you have a philosopher in the 1800s who actually is getting all of this information from the past, from great philosophers. You know, somebody like Descartes or somebody like Immanuel Kant, who really put it easily as like, let's break down moral systems. Let's break down what it's like to be solipsistic, or subjective versus objective reality, and understood those things in a way that somebody like Frederick Nietzsche could understand and then could relay out in the world. So really what you got is this almost this conduit, as these other guys are conduits of the Greeks, this conduit of these great philosophers that really, I think he had a bit of epiphany and said, holy shit, if it's all me, what does religion have left if everything in the bag religion claims to be is already within me the moment I'm born, and not really something religion gives to me in the end. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, I think I'm understanding like what he is. He's not anti-religious. He's he's atheist, but he's not like
and the atheism thing was later in his life, I believe, from what I just quickly read as far as like the atheism part, because I didn't know he was an atheist, and I was like, well, how is he an atheist with atheism? And so I quickly read a little quick thing about how he was an atheist. He was an atheist later, or he was an anarchist later in his life. He wrote about enjoying atheism, but I don't know, Niranjan, if he said like, if he understood atheism the modern way we stood atheism, right? Like you would say to a Nazi, right? That they did. You're right. They did, admire Friedrich Nietzsche, but it was one of those things where Nazis were embracing God. They were still about embracing God and embracing more of a Christian God, if anything. They didn't like the Catholic version. Then at the same time, you would say the Nazis is a fascist regime of a right wing leaning, thing, but their right wing leaning fascism is not today's right leaning fascism. Like, it's completely different. Different systems, different ways of thinking, different outcomes, different goals too. So I would say that he had back then might be the same words, but could possibly be completely different meanings when it comes to anarchism and atheism and nihilism.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that's correct to some way. And furthermore, regarding the Nazis, I think they used they used the relevant parts of Nietzsche and oversimplified it and used that to justify their beliefs. Because if they were truly, that's the point. Like, if they truly understood Nietzsche's work, and suppose they decided to let's say, I think this is correct. Like, this is what I feel like it's correct, and this is what I feel like it's right. They wouldn't be a right-wing fascist regime, even though Nietzsche had some, let's say, right-wing tendencies. I wouldn't call him politically right-wing, because he's like, there are a lot of stories where he isn't talking about this sort of system where the might is right. He's talking about a place where humans create their own values, and they live in a kind of different atmosphere than anything we've experienced before. So it's like there is this quote from Nietzsche that basically says that the disintegration of moral values, it goes around something like that. Disintegration of moral values does not create what you think it does. So what he meant by that was that it creates something other than that we have never experienced before, and I don't think we will ever experience that, because frankly I don't think most people would create their own values, because I think that there will still be a religion, still be a god, even with the rise of science. That's something I believe. I don't have a supposedly argument for it, but that's just something that I have experienced from my surroundings. That's just speaking from personal experience. I don't think people will stop believing in religion and God. So it's like the problem with interpreting Nietzsche is that Nietzsche is much more complicated than we think he is. Like, he's extremely nuanced, extremely complicated. So it is extremely easy to get off in different directions when we talk about it. So that's kind of my whole take on this.
So I just want to get understanding. Like, values isn't like what the surroundings around you, like your car and your fridge and stuff. You define it as it's a different definition.
Values are more of abstract ideas upon which you yourself value. So I value my family, right? But what I value about my family is the value itself, not the family itself, right? I value the concept of family. I value the concept of well-being for others. Those are values that I have, and I'll build my moral structures off of those certain values that I think won't compromise those values.
And that's very important, and everything kind of surrounded it. Naranja, that's you, right, Naranjan?
Yeah. So here's what I think. I think that's correct, and that's why I think science won't actually successfully create moral values, because here's how I think about it. So we filter the action. So there are these thoughts. We filter these thoughts based on these value systems. We give specific value to each thought. That is just something that comes as innate. And I do believe that there is something of a human nature, at least to some point, some effect that controls all of this. I'm not saying that it's completely deterministic, but there is a human nature that helps us figure out what we should value. Of course, we can go against that human nature. That is possible, but I don't think that's going to do us any good. So there is this sort of innate value structure of things that we actually value. Like, there is something like.
Yeah, but I would say that Science, like I said, science specifically is just for discovery of the physical world. We're discovering things around us. How we apply them to our social structures, I think, is where you find all those things. Science is not going to sit there and tell us how to treat each other. Science is going to say the way you're treating people, you're getting this result. Do something different, and that is where our values and morals and government and all these things we take a chance in a different direction based off these things in a pragmatic view, and then we go, now what does it say? Well, now it says you're doing better. Okay, cool. Is there one solution? No. And if we let it into a scientific solution, we'll then walk half the population into the sea because we can't feed them right now. So like science.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we definitely don't lead that way, which is good.
When you get more when you get more enrichment through the things that are valuable around you, it in like of technological innovation, it improves your life and the lives of others. So I mean, the betterment of society and of humanity and civilization, you that's a value.
Yeah, that's like I think it depends because this is gonna be a little bit different because I view the world from more like a mathematical perspective. So it's like, let's consider the cases. Like, suppose there is like this is one of the problems that I have with something that I remember from this conversation, like with Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, is that Sam Harris talks about this. There is this highest good, and there is this what do you call, the worst of all evils, and our goal is to travel from the worst of all evils to the highest good, and there is a moral landscape surrounding this. And when I read the book, the problem I had with that was the fact that what if there was a sort of, let's say there was a psychopath whose only thing he values is murdering other people. That is clearly a conflict of interest, and we have psychopaths in our world. That is a scientific fact, and that's why like there are a lot of nuanced cases that we have to consider, and it is often contradictory to what we assume. And exactly like the Art of Grimm said, science says, like, gives us what is, like science tells us what is, but on how to interpret that information,
it adds enrichment to your life and making it better.
No, that's the point I'm trying to make. Yes,
I'm finished.
Yeah, the point I'm trying to make is technology does not necessarily enrich everybody's life. It may enrich most people's lives. I agree. That may be the case, and that's a big may, because we encounter a lot of problems with how do you tell somebody's telling the truth and all that. Let's leave that at for now. But I'm trying to say that how do you claim that it enriches everybody's life? Like, how do you claim that?
You can do more with it. You could do more, get more done through tech.
I mean,
of approaching things in a way that helps, and you live a better life, a more enriched life.
Why is that better?
Tech is one thing.
I mean, like, if you're living a life in a way that is more for you to adapt to the environment for survival in getting things done through tech, that in itself is better. You're using something because you're trying to. Everything's about trying to adapt, and if you use things of tech to help you adapt better in trying to in more achieving that goal, and you can measure its efficiency on that on how it more helps you achieve the goal of adapting to surviving
can I step up, Nevik, and kind of defend your point?
Right.
We always practice science. dawn of creation, we've practiced science. We've also practiced tech. Thing about our like species likes to have tools, likes to use rocks, likes to use certain things in certain ways to technologically give us the advantage, adapt nature to ourselves rather than ourselves to nature in certain ways. I would say that it's just a natural part, like Nivik would say, of adapting, and every creature on the planet does it. Just do a more complicated version.
And to the point,
What
like
more helps is adaptation is
psychopathy,
value.
when we're talking about like psychopaths who have quote marks different values, we have
Yeah, we
to
got that already. But we're
scientifically
talking about
recognize
adaptation.
that psychopathy is an ailment. It's a problem that can potentially be solved. We have to.
It's a natural instinct to adapt to the environment, and what helps us more adapt to the environment is a value.
Hold on, Nivik. Let Divine finish his thought, please.
Like when we're talking about like homosexuals, yes, scientifically we know homosexuality is a natural like occurrence. Is that a problem? No, it isn't. Like it doesn't harm anyone if there is homosexuals. So there is nothing to solve. We have to treat homosexuals equally as everybody else. Now, when we're talking about psychopaths, it's an ailment. It's a situation where a person lacks something fundamental because like the how is it called empathy is it's a foundational feature of a human being in order that allows it to feel for other people and empathize with them. So we have to consider that we need to seek the way to solve this problem, to cure this, so to speak, disease. We do not have to adapt our global moral framework in order to appease psychopaths. We just have to deal with it as we can and try to, in some way, describe them that even if they are psychopaths and they have no empathy, it is still in their best interest to treat other people as with respect and all the things following from that. But we do not nothing will appease everyone. It's just a fact, and there is no ideal world that can be achieved. There's just the reality as we see it, and there is better and worse actions to make.
Go ahead, Nivik.
Yeah, you can live more life with tech by getting more done that what people in current times than people would be able to do in the past. So you can get more out of life with technology, and not just by doing, but physically itself and living well.
Oh, so I mentioned this before. I don't want to shift the conversation too much, but I have mentioned this before that there is a scary Venn diagram when it comes to tech and psychopaths. Because one day a psychopath will have the technology to possibly create a nuclear weapon, possibly create a virus that can't be stopped, and so on and so on and so on. As a psychopaths seem to always be a 1% of 1% of 1%. I think it's just 1% of 1% of human population. A lot of them out there right now, and it is one of those things that when they do get a hold of tech, do a lot more damage, right, than them just on their own. And that's another scary thing too. So tech will exacerbate the liabilities of psychopaths as we move forward in our advancements. And psychopaths in a whole have done more damage versus back in the day with less tech. Do more damage as tech increases. It's a scary Venn diagram. Surprised how it actually works out. And maybe we're gonna hit the ceiling. I think, as Scott would say, the great filter to where we blow ourselves up oblivion because it's the
That's the argument against AI, right?
AI, nuclear warfare, created viruses, destabilization of our planet. I mean, you name it. I mean, those things are happening, almost now. So it's how far do we go until what they call the great filter, which is the evolution of a species to the point where it destroys itself because its tech is so great. Crazy.
Well, I mean, like with AI, you could have if you have I think like if you have many different variations of tech, it can potentially fight against. Yeah. So there could be a counter.
AI is
something negative.
Is one thing, and I think for the most part, it's not just AI. It's a million things that we can create with technology that could have a problem that wafts over humanity and changes it forever and could possibly extinct it.
Yeah,
that could be an issue for sure. So I don't want to get off.
But that could be an argument towards tech. I understand what you're saying, that because tech probably grow anyway, and it's inevitable. So yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying it could be an argument towards tech, because when you have many different forms of tech, you could have tech that can fight against the potential, negative, potential tech that could be negative of discovering something or countering something.
Right. So you could also have tech solve the problems, which is why I say humans are the problem and the cure. Because I think, or the disease and the cure. Sorry, the problem and the solution.
So the potential fear of tech can be a bad thing because it's going to grow regardless.
Yeah. So you could say too much population is going to destroy the planet with trash and destruction and lack of food and stuff. And I could say, yes, but a small population could go out really easily, given one natural disaster, as compared to an interplanetary species. So, maybe more humans is the answer to something. So that's like an equivalent to like the tech answer, where you say, well, tech, as it gets, larger, now everybody's got a cell phone in their pocket, a supercomputer. Everybody's got a hacking device in their pocket. Everybody's got a nuclear launch code, briefcase in their pocket. Or we have tech that actually stop those kind of actions from happening, and what do we do in the future? So there's a lot of answers that come with
because some people think about being anti-tech, and I'm thinking like, well, that could be a bad thing, because like we wouldn't want one person that ends up having one thing that can be destructive to all. Like if there's a a wide variety of tech, it could potentially fight it back against what's that tech that is negative.
Let me try to circle this back through.
What do you mean by negative? I mean, like, because you're saying like these things that are negative. I don't understand what.
Okay, so like if you have something like the radiation of a potential nuke, you can have tech that can discover that, and that can pick up radiation.
Yeah, very correct.
Or maybe I don't know, maybe better. I don't know.
Well, what we did actually
something in the future, technology fights against technology.
Yeah, I'll give you an example
all the time.
That has nothing to do with like positive or negative. That's just
okay. Forget that word. Forget that word. I'm just saying technology fight against technology. All the time.
We're good. Yes, it does. Here's a good example. We didn't know North Korea was launching nukes underground. Right, it was actually quite a scary discovery, and the way we found that out was that we had seismographs all around the world monitoring these plates, and then we said, "What the fuck is that going on in nuclear in North Korea?" And we found out, oh, these motherfuckers, they built a silo, they launched a fucking bomb underground, and so that's how we found out, was just because of the tech, So it is quite interesting to notice these things. You can call them negative or positive, good or bad.
Yes, I just don't put that qualification as saying negative or positive, good or bad. I just say like, hey, like this technology allows us to understand this information. Like once you say something is positive or negative, you're making a subjective claim at that point.
Well, but anyway,
negative is a loss, right? And then positive is a gain. That's why I never used the word good or bad. And I was trying to get around the word good or bad, and I used the word negative and positive, but you still hammered me.
Yeah. Well, I'm not hammering you. I'm just saying, you've got to.
He just gave his opinion.
Like,
That's all. He just gave his
yeah.
opinion. That's it.
When you say something, it's like some piece of technology is negative or positive. I think you're not necessarily making you're making the claim of like, oh yeah, if we add 1 to 2, that's a positive, or if we subtract 1 from 2, that's a negative. So when you say specifically just like adding numbers together, or like taking things into like, okay, like 1 + 1 = 2, so that's positive. You have a positive amount coming out of that.
Yeah.
But you're making the claim that says this specific technology is negative or positive. I don't think that really applies. I'm just saying maybe clarify the point that you're making
I'm
a
thinking
bit
in
more
terms of
concisely.
regressive and progressive.
I think he did. I think he did take it back.
Hello?
Positive.
Yeah, you're in the fishbowl, Grim.
How's that? Is that better?
You're still in the fishbowl.
No, I hear you.
There you go.
Okay. I'm good.
What did you say?
I said I'm good. Back to the God debate.
No, I heard somebody say something.
I'm actually gonna take off. You gentlemen have a good night.
Yeah, like the final point I'm going to make is that we are going to arrive at some values one way or the other, and we can we can arrive at them either by knowing something or assuming something or making something up. And as the story seems to tell us, is that knowing shit is pretty important and allow us to arrive at better values over time as we observe the different outcomes. So
It can help
that,
progress.
well, yeah, that's the meaning of progress. Like there are values that are almost completely shared between us because we have seen so much stuff going wrong when we had wrong values, and the same with our morals. Like no, not killing is pretty much has to be self-evident at this point, because like when you kill someone, there is really nothing you can do to that person above that other than like taking everything from them. And
So the
like,
advancement of humanity and civilization is of value.
well, yeah.
What helps that?
And now I gotta go because it's 5 in the morning here. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, the point I was trying to make was the fact that I agree with you that science can help us choose values, that they can help us, but these values are ultimately subjective. We can't create an objective framework of values from science. That's kind of the argument that Sam Harris was making, and
I understand.
that's yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like science can help us. Like for example, let's say one of my values. Let's say it's happiness. Science can help me determine which particular activity would make me more happy. So I can then choose that activity and do that activity so that I could get happiness. So it helps us, but I don't think it is possible to create an objective set of values. I should have probably worded that better. So we cannot create an objective set of values through science.
Okay. So when you reason around the environment around you, you come to a conclusion of what can be helpful to you.
Yes,
like
that is correct.
building something like a hut, or
Yes, science
going
does
there or
help.
whatever.
Like, yeah, it's like
So
science.
the whole point of that is adapting. to the environment for the potential of more likely surviving.
I mean,
and what
that is
helps.
Yeah, that is your value, right? Your value might be surviving.
Well, you don't want to live?
No, survival is not what a value that I aspire to. I don't care if I die. That's just how I am. But that's not the value that I aspire to. It's like it's different. Like that's what I said. There's a lot of nuance in this topic.
Okay, but what exists, all that exists that you care about, that helps that, would be science helping that.
Science helps things subjectively. Like for example, a person who suppose, let's say, for example, let's take
So
this
when you
example.
build a spaceship and go into space, that was built subjectively.
Hold on, Nivek. Let Nirjan finish.
I'm not saying that science is subjective. I'm saying that we cannot create. That the point I'm trying to make is, I'm going to build off on this. So the point I'm trying to make is, we cannot create an objective set of values from science. We cannot create an objective set. We can
I understand.
determine. Yeah, we can determine whether how to change our subjective set of values through science. I agree with that, because as I said, suppose our value is happiness. That's something that is important to me. But fundamentally, these are things that we have inside us. Like, these values are innate to us. We have these set of values that we then say, okay, I have a value. Let's call it value A. Then I want to do actions. I want to take upon actions that promote that value. So it's like, well, my value is happiness. I want to do things that make me more happy, and science helps us with that. So I'm saying that we cannot create an objective set of values, because values are fundamentally subjective. Like, they're innate and subjective in nature.
So what you want is a subjective thing, and the means to get that subjective thing is objective. What you're using of science.
No, the means to get that thing can be helped by objective knowledge, can be aided using objective knowledge.
Yeah, but the value is subjective.
The value is subjective, yeah.
And your subjective value is?
My subjective value would be betterment. For it depends. Like, it's a lot more contextual than it sounds. So betterment, perhaps, I don't know, strength, I don't know. Like, it's still on the works. Like, it changes based on the context, right? It's like, suppose I'm in the gym, the core value is strength. Suppose I'm in the, and betterment also plays a role in that. I'm not denying that. But suppose I am in, I'm reading something. The core value is, let's say, we can call the core value betterment, because I am trying to better myself. Like, I think the most core value that I believe in is betterment, or overall. Yeah.
What about living a longer life would include that?
Not necessarily. Like, suppose living a longer life.
The things that you have of value, you could experience it more. That would be of more value, no?
No, it depends on the context, I think. Like, suppose I live longer and I live my life as an old person who has arthritis and who can't go out of his home. Like, that's one of the consequences of living old. And if that was not the case, I would say, yes, it would be better. But that is most probably the case. That's probably going to be the case. I don't think science is advanced enough to make us eternally, like, young until we die, at least. Young until we die. So, if that is the case, I would not want to live long. I would want to die at 40 or 50.
Yeah. It's just that the things that you achieve, that you see of value, it's hard for me to separate that at times. Like, if you want to do something that you consider to be of value, you can do more of it through science.
I mean, I agree with that. Like, science can aid with the subjective pursuit of values, of selecting which value I don't think it's more about selecting which value. It's more about selecting which action. Like science can aid us in the process of selecting actions that adhere to our values. It cannot select the value itself, because there are fundamental things that we have in our mind. Whether that is universal or not, I don't know. But it's clearly not objective. That's the point I'm trying to make.
And you see morals the same way, right?
Yes,
It's subjective.
like yeah, it is subjective. Like morality is based upon values. Like fundamentally, if you break it down, morality is based upon values. So it's like that's why I use the word values, because I think morality has, at least for me, it has negative connotations to it. So that's why I use the word values instead of morality.
Values and morals are you see you view them as the same. Okay. I'm not really understanding. Let's see, morals. I guess what you consider good and bad would be more subjectively, and value.
Yes, I mean
A value is something that's important to you.
Yes, like morality is made up of values. Like you decide, you value good. Like you decide that you value doing good. So that's what it is, right? It's like there are these core values that any moral system preaches. Say moral systems preach of core values, and based on that, they say this value is good, this value is bad. Even that is a value. It is quite. In hindsight, I think it's quite nuanced to think of it. Like it's almost like you have these core values. You put a layer on top of that and say that these set of values. Let's take a set of values a1 to an. Let's take two subsets. So I'm only considering this in the positive and negative direction. So it's like these set of values move towards the positive, and these set of values move towards the negative. So that's how moral systems are created. They are based upon values.
Okay. So I guess meaning, values, and morals would be subjective.
Yes, that's kind of the point that I'm trying to. That's what I'm trying to understand, right?
Oh, you came to a you're not trying to understand it. You came to a conclusion of that's
Yes.
what it is.
No, I'm actually trying to understand whether that, because I had that conclusion, but I'm still trying to understand, still trying to see if my belief is accurate or not. I think that's the whole point of having a conversation is to see, is to gain knowledge and see if your knowledge is still intact or not.
That's why I kind of earlier I made a connection in what you're saying. I was saying, like, when it comes to meaning, my view is that you take an understanding of the environment around you in identifying and taking in meaning. And once you have a deep enough understanding, you know how to engage with that environment and manipulating it for your own gain and adapting, and that manipulating in what you create and use to help you adapt is of value. And by taking in enough understanding of the environment, you would more likely have an idea to approach a thing or person in a positive, interactive way. That is progressive. It's in interaction where you are familiarized with other people and you can relate to other people, where you will less likely view something or one in a negative way, because you would put you could potentially think through your emotions instead of fact and logical understanding, where you can see something or someone is not a threat, and where if something and someone that's beyond your understanding, you would end up thinking through your emotions of as a substitute of what you lack in fact and logic, and that emotion would more likely be negative because it's a natural instinct of all animals to fear what you don't understand, where you look at in a negative way where you would more perceive as immoral than moral. That's my connection to meaning, values, and morality. Where in the past, when it came to religion, that's what was substituted instead of reasoning, where there's a back and forth between the Enlightenment and objective and religious and subjective, where it's kind of like, it's kind of hard to govern with the religious thing because people are there interpreting things all different types of ways. We can't come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, but that doesn't make it not reasonable. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
well, of course, there's
things,
reasoning in religion.
Yeah, a lot of the things that we understand that
they
we can
acknowledge
say
things
are
that were true.
reasonable is like, yeah. So, I just think you make the miscalculation of basing something on like somebody's religious perspective with them being able to
No, I'm not
make
anti-religion.
reasonable position. No.
Because
it seems to me what you're saying is like if somebody's religious, they are fundamentally less reasonable, and the less religious somebody comes, fundamentally they are more reasonable. I think that's
I was more, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I just was talking about psychology and how people are naturally, and this necessarily has to do with religion. It's just I'm just talking about how the mind is and how people psychologically would be when it comes to not understanding and having enough certain amount of knowledge and being able to identify things and others in where you'd more likely to relate because you more likely be on the same page in interacting in positive ways. So when I come to a conclusion of 1 + 1 = 2, a person that thinks the same way along math, they'll come to that. We're not going to fight over it. We'll be on the same page.
See, I mean that's.
But religion,
the only problem is sometimes
it's absolute.
Like,
you can't really.
No, it's not absolute because you're conflating something that is absolute, like the idea of 1 + 1 = 2, with the subjective idea of people's reasoning. I mean, so I get where you're trying to go. I just don't think you're making the best argument that you could be. I just think you're making mistakes.
Well, I'm just kicking religion off.
Well, I know, and I'm just telling you, like I understand where you're coming from. Maybe you want to refine your argument to make it a bit more pointed, so it's not comparing comparing ideas of 1 + 1 = 2 versus the ideas of the way somebody sees the world, because that's, I mean,
I'm saying people come to different conclusions with religion based on interpretation.
Yeah, but people don't come to different conclusions with 1 + 1 = 2. That's the very reason why George Orwell used the very famous line of 2 + 2 = 5, because he was pointing out the absurdity of it, but nobody's actually like thinking, yeah, 2 + 2 = 5. He used that as like an allegorical tool to show the absurdity of the position that he was arguing in his book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just relating science to religion, so, where people can come to the same conclusion on the same page. Not fight amongst, fight alone, fight about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess.
But anyways, I was just telling him my view. He was I was understanding his perspective, and I was just giving mine. So, and where in when it comes to meaning, values, and morals.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like that's what I'm trying to say. Like exactly what you tried to say. Like the view that you just put forward, that is completely your view. Like even though there can be, there can be in nature, there is a nature, there are some things that occur naturally, like for example for humans. So that doesn't mean that it is true for everyone. That's the first thing. That doesn't mean that it is the most
Okay,
beneficial thing to do.
I'm fine. I'm fine that like my view
Hold
is wrong,
on,
but I want you to go
Nivek,
over
Nivek,
specifically
let
each thing I said and just
hold on,
deconstruct it and what.
hold on, Nivek, let Nirjan finish, man. Like he just started.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say that I'm not opposing the fact that there is you said a lot of things about survival and being natural. So two things that I concluded from that was, the first thing is the act of the actions you take towards surviving. That is your, because survival is your personal value. Like you value survival. That is not necessarily true for everyone. For example, me, it
That's
is not true
natural.
for. No, that's the problem. You are going to the naturalistic fallacy. That's not necessarily the best choice, because take an example. All the greatest, let's say, give me a sport, like let's say the combat sports, for example, boxing. Let's take boxing or MMA or something like that. It is not the acts that they're engaging in shouldn't be the case, because they're literally fighting, and that causes that is a potential cause to death. That is, you could say that, well, that is not natural, but is it not great? And again, it comes to the subjective experience. For you, it may not be great, but I think it's pretty damn good that they're trying to fight it out and see who is the strongest. It's like, well, that's pretty cool. You love doing that, so why not do it? Like, the point I'm trying to make is, natural does not necessarily mean objective, and this natural thing may not be true for everyone. That's the point. Like, human beings, although there are similarities, they're also different. I agree that there are similarities between the two sexes and human beings in general, but that does not mean that they're different. No, that does not mean they're all the same. They're different, in the sense that each of us has a free mind, and we can think of whatever we want to. That itself says something. Like, that itself says that, and this is because I'm assuming free will. That's another conversation, the whole. Like, so the point I'm trying to make is, natural does not necessarily mean good, and natural does not hold true for everyone. Those are the two things that I want to make, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like when you look, like I mean, like majority of people don't do anything.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, for the majority of people, it may be true. I agree with you. I'm saying it's not completely true. Like, it is not true every single time, in every single context. Like, it is not true. It may be, what do you call, true probabilistically. That's something that it can be true. I don't know if it's true, but it can be true. There is a chance that, because I don't know much about psychology to make a claim about that, but I'm saying it is not true in the sense that truth is used. It is not true.
Yeah.
It may be probabilistic. I agree with you. I'm gonna give you that, but it is not true.
I think I'm doing is providing opposite view of what you have, and I think I see where you're coming from. It's kind of like what I'm saying in how I perceive things. You're giving alternative of that's, you're giving a different view of the opposite alternative to that.
Exactly.
And I guess you can say nothing is really. If without one thing, it will probably be the other. That's how come I was saying, like if you didn't have knowledge and reasoning, you probably would think through your emotion.
Yes, I do agree with that. Like,
it's kind of like a vice. It's kind of like a vice versa thing, and that's just a natural thing. It's kind of like if you didn't have one thing, then the other thing would be. And I guess depending on a particular environment that you're in, or where you are, that's where you would land.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're there's there's the religion could be good in people being on the same page and they're governing by something. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense or not. They're on the same page and they're moving as a unit. And it's helping to keep a norm. It's helping to keep an order. Based on their their limit of understanding. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you have the option of getting past that and getting more understanding, then that would be better. But if if that's not the case, then that's just not the case. And you can't say what folks do is bad or not. It's kind of like when some folks say, like, yeah, religion is good, and is it did things that were positive, but if you had the option of doing something else that was better, then you take that option instead. But I mean, if you don't have that, then you just settle for what you got.
Well, have you ever heard the phrase, Nivek? If ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. Do you know what that means? So I mean, like you're saying a lot of things like, well, if it was this, or what if it was this? Like, I mean, that just doesn't. I guess I'm just not entirely sure what you're actually trying to say, because you're a little bit all over the place right now.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, religion's not bad. Like, if you didn't have like a certain knowledge and reasoning, then I can see that religion could be a beneficial thing. I'm kind of agreeing with, kind of agree with him, huh?
Yeah, but what's that certain knowledge and reasoning? So you can go into something and say, like, well, if you had this certain amount of knowledge and reasoning, well, if we had a certain amount of knowledge and reasoning, we could be, like, if we had the amount of knowledge and reasoning that are going to have 3,000 years from now, we could be able to do something different, but we don't. So I mean, I just don't understand where you're trying to go with that argument.
Well, no, I'm saying that I get like religion could be beneficial. That it helps people be on the same page, and it holds order, and it upholds custom norms, and I'm trying to come over to the side of religion here, Scott.
No,
I don't know, I don't get the skepticism.
Honestly, no, I'm not trying to bog
I'm
you
switching
down.
from where my stance is.
I know. I know. I'm not trying to bog you down. I'm just trying to get clarification. And what you said, I do think is clarification. Because what you said there is like, you think that, yeah, religion could be good or whatnot. And that's sort of my point. It's like people just have to deal with what they have now, and it's always easy to look back and be like, oh, well, back in the past, like it was like this.
Hindsight, I got you.
Yeah, but like right now, we don't know, and there are going to be things in 1,000 years. People are going to look back and like, oh man, if they just knew this, like, and that we all don't know right now. So I don't know. To me, it's like just more of it's just a better argument to argue along the lines of not hindsight, but more of just like, okay, we know the scientific method is better, not because of hindsight, but because of actual outcomes that we're experiencing right now and what we can do currently, because you could make that same argument as well. You could look back and like, oh well, things in the past, like it was because they were religious and they did all these terrible things. We're still doing terrible things today now, and we will look back in the future to what we're doing now and be like, oh well, if they just knew these specific things, you know. But I mean, literally the only thing we can do is the best we can. And I do think I agree with you. The best we can is to get rid of uh, dogmatic beliefs that like lead us down bad paths. That comes like religion and like any sort of dogmatic belief. I think it goes nowhere.
What's your view on what he was saying about subjective of meaning, value, and morals, of it being subjective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I mean, it's sort of the conundrum we find ourselves in, right? Something you recognize, pretty early on as a human being, is you realize that you're experiencing the entire world all by yourself. Nobody else in your life is ever going to experience what you experience. The best you can possibly do is try to use like communication techniques, whether it's words or whether it's like nonverbal communication, to try to like portray to another person what you're feeling. For the most part, that works, but like nobody's ever going to experience what you experience. You are on a lone trip through the universe, and that's okay.
So you can't come to, like, you can't know everything. So so in a way, your view on things is subjective, because there's always more
Yeah,
to learn and more to know
yeah,
about something.
course, yeah. Like anybody who says they have some sort of objective truth, uh, I don't know. That you've got a lot to prove to say you know anything about the greater existence of humanity. I'll go into the realm of like philosophy, because we can agree something that's objective, like the sun's going to come up tomorrow. Yeah, like
Uh-huh.
that's objective. We know that, but I think in this conversation we're talking about the greater understanding of our existence in the universe, and that's purely subjective. There's no way, once it comes to the way we interact with the environment that we're in, the reality that we're in, that's subjective. Like there's no way to break away from that.
But what's more beneficial for us? Um, and to adapt and to advance. That that's subjective too. That's not objective. I mean, you can see if something's more helpful or not.
It's sort of both. I mean, so basically, what we have the ability to do is we do have the ability to understand certain things that are objective, these things that are true, regardless of our own interpretation of it, regardless of our own subjectivity. That's what objectivity is, and that's recognizing like, yeah, I live on a planet and there's a sun that we're rotating around. Like there's a star, there's this mass of hydrogen, helium, nitrogen, and all these different elements that is burning bright, and we are a body of rock that's covered in water with an atmosphere that also has a magnetic.
What would help us?
Yeah.
What would help us with science, and you can measure the effects of the health.
Oh, see, but that's not science. So when you say you're measuring the objectivity of like what kind of products or like what's been improved, that's when you're talking about engineering. It's like, scientists didn't create refrigerators. Scientists created the technology behind refrigerators, and then you had engineers who created a refrigerator. You know what I mean? So science, like sometimes when people think about science, they think about it in the sense of like your iPhone. It's actually a different realm. Science, what they're looking at is they're trying to understand the basic fundamentals of the way the world works, the way reality works. So everything that we have on our cell phone, on the computer, this is all like settled things that were discovered like 100 years ago, probably longer than that, like the understanding of electromagnetism, which is crucial to computers working. That started in like the 1700s, so it's not necessarily science. When I think of science, I think about discovery and understanding, being able to have greater understanding of the reality in which we exist. But when we're talking about products and things that make our life better, that comes down to engineering. If you understand why I'm making that differentiation. Because it's like think about like somebody like Galileo. Like the only thing he did is he looked up with his he looked up with a telescope and just discovered that okay, every time this quote unquote star keeps coming back around. So what that means to me, that star, that body that I'm seeing, is rotating around another object. And he understood because it came back at the same time all the time. It was rotating around some object as opposed to like something you would see in the sky and that would just move to another place. You know right off the bat, no, that is not rotating around the gravitational force. Same thing with like understanding the way like galaxies work, is like we understand things rotate around gravitational forces. So do you see where I'm going? Like with what I see the difference between science and engineering is?
Mm. There's a connection there, though.
Oh,
Right.
there's absolutely a connection there because, like, through understanding, like, okay, we can see that Saturn is rotating around a body. Copernicus saw this and said, okay, we can determine that's a sun. What that actually allows us to do is the mathematics that they created from that is the same mathematics that allows us to put satellites around Earth and make a GPS system. Now, the GPS system in and of itself is a feat of engineering. It's not a feat of science. Like the science was already understood. Like what they were doing is it was a feat of engineering. But like, can we actually put these things in place that give us this ability? And you have to separate those two things because they are fundamentally different.
Yeah, the what humans want to do is adapt to lifelong, and science helps that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but science is the language of engineering, but engineering is the practice of putting that knowledge into practical use. You know what I mean? So that's the differentiation. So in the grand scale of things, you have like a scientist who like this is the person who's discovering these truths about the way the universe works. You have an engineer who's making some sort of tool, but then you also have technicians. Technicians are the people who understand that tool and how to fix it when it needs to be fixed, you know. And there's a whole line of people in this process that they all matter, you know. And
So
there could be people who are the best technicians in the world, but they still believe in God, and it doesn't make them a
uh,
bad technician, you know.
hmm. You know, you're trying to adapt and live longer, and you have, I think, what I think you have is varying degrees of understanding things, and
So yeah, that's
those varying degrees. It's you have one that will more go in one direction of least understanding, where you will make a, it's more loosely open to interpretation, and you have another direction where it's less loosely open to interpretation by having deeper understanding of that thing that you're trying to understand.
yeah, but at the
And
same
it's kind of
time,
like it's kind of like a scale, you know what I mean? Because you're never going to be 100%, right? You're never going to
yeah,
be
yeah,
100% in understanding something 100%.
yeah,
There's always something more as time goes
yeah,
on into the
yeah,
future.
but
You have a
perhaps,
deeper understanding of something.
yeah, but perhaps, but I don't think that statement gets
But
us
but but,
anywhere.
but what I'm saying
Yeah,
is, depending on your
necessarily.
understanding, with the environment has to do relative to how it more benefits and least benefits in your understanding. So
Not necessarily. I think of that. That's the thing. I think at that point you're placing a value judgment on something that there's not a value judgment placed on.
well, I
That's
mean,
what I'm
if you're more knowledgeable and you're more reasonable, you can approach
Oh,
something
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
a
yeah,
way
yeah.
where
Yeah,
you can.
hindsight's 2020. If you're more knowledgeable and you have more experience, and like I said, in 1,000 years, we could look back at what we're doing and be like, oh, why were they doing that? Because they have more knowledge and experience at that point. But at the time of us doing it right now, we don't have that future knowledge or experience. So that's what I'm saying. Like trying to compare these things
No. I'm
is,
talking
is
about a certain moment that you're in,
well,
and where you're
not,
trying to
not
figure
even
things out. You can come to a wrong
certain
answer, and you can
moment.
come to an
Yes,
answer that is
yes,
more
you can.
helpful.
Yeah, you can.
And
Absolutely.
you have levels of understanding of things, and if you're not going to
Hold
understand
on, hold
something
on, hold on. What is the bigger point that you're getting to? Because you're
with
saying
deeper
like,
understanding of identifying something, you in more knowledge, you can more likely have an idea how to approach a situation in a
yes,
positive way that could be beneficial to you.
yep. So well,
It's not like
do you think people burning coal now, as opposed to people burning coal 300 years ago? Do you think they have a more knowledgeable or a better understanding of the impact that it has in the environment around them? I think they do, right? So, what does that have to do with anything? That's the point that I'm making. It's like
well, you have a lot of people that
you're
are against coal now.
oh no, well you have those people who are against it because they have their own economic self-interest there. So that's a different discussion from what you're saying because you're making the
Some
claim
is
of
better ways
well,
of
hold
going
on,
about
hold on,
things.
hold on, hold on, hold on, Nivek. You're making the claim that it has nothing that you didn't bring up like people's own self economic interest or anything. You just said like, oh well, at some point we know it's a better way to do something. Yeah, we do know that, but that doesn't mean drop you in at any given point in time that you don't know what happens in the future. You don't know what that better position to take is necessarily because we could we could drop you into the
I
future at
understand, I understand.
6,000 years and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, we shouldn't have done that and that. But
But everything we
if
do
we
is a
just drop you in
rational
right
cause and effect
now, like
prediction of the future, though.
yeah, and when if we just drop you in right now, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So the best anybody can possibly do is go off the information that they have now to determine the choices that they make. That's the absolute best that anybody can do, right? I mean, I've never seen anything
Yep.
unless you're unless you're going to say there's like some sort of like divine knowledge, you know. I don't think you're going to go that route.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, I
And
mean, before,
Niranjan, you still there, buddy?
Yeah.
Trav, villain. You got anything? Trav, villain, Trav.
I just popped back in. I'm not on the page.
Okay. Yeah, Niranjan, go ahead, man.
I was going to
It's your
say one
turn,
thing that
right?
you said. I was just going to add one thing to what you said. Like in the past, people go by hearsay when it came to
Yep.
saying what is true or what's not, and people more switch to establish what happened of what do you call it, but
Objective evidence is what you're talking about?
by validating.
Yeah. Comparison. So you can say, okay, so if all of us can like do this same thing and we get the same information back, then we know that's the idea of like scientific consensus. Is like you can have 5 people do the exact same thing and they all get the exact same results. That's when you know like you might be onto something.
Yeah, or you can have a person that just say this is the case, but then you end up.
Exactly. Yeah, and if those people put their case to like be tested, if it's nonsense, it's going to be proven to be nonsense. If there's anything there, the there shows up.
And regardless of whether they say what you see with your own eyes happening with Trump, what that person said.
Exactly.
You're still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah, it's like yeah, I agree with most of what you guys said. I do think that. So finally, this is what I would like to say. Basically, the position that I'm taking is the fact that even though science is objective, I wouldn't go as far to say objective. I would say more like universal, because science provides us with universal truth. And so I would still say that even though they can aid us in taking actions that help, that are in alignment with our values, they cannot give us the values themselves, because values are something that each human has innately, like they're innate constructions. Like we don't know where they're coming from. We are too ignorant for that, and I don't think we're ever gonna know. Like think about it. Like you do something, you're doing something, but you can innately compare whether that action was better than your last one. You can innately compare that. There is that innate comparison. Whether you don't know whether it is better or not, you can still engage in the act of comparing. You're engaging in the act of comparing all the time. You're looking out at a list of potential choices, you're comparing them and selecting the one you think is best or worst or whatever it is, but you're still engaging in the act of comparison. That act of comparison itself is a testament to the innate value systems we have. And I'm not denying that science can't help, but science definitely helps us in the pursuit of these of actions that are in alignment with these values. So yeah, that's pretty much my position. Yeah.
So you're pro science and pro religion.
The way I
I'm not pro religion.
It's not pro religions. I understand where you're coming from. So it's the same idea. So we can understand what science is going to do. It's gonna give us some sort of framework to understand, like you said, universality. Universality.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I get what you're saying, because you can say like the way somebody feels. It's the same thing like somebody's favorite food to eat, or somebody's favorite song, or somebody's favorite genre of music. So there are these things that like science can never say anything about, like why this person likes sushi as their favorite meal over a steak, or this person likes, Ravi Shankar over like crystal method, there's science has nothing to say on the experience of human beings. It just like the only thing science can really do is say like here is the reality in which we exist, and then everything else is left up to us to understand. So the reason I like music in movies is not something that can be boiled down to a specific, like, okay, that's because like x plus y equals t over 3, y, like that cannot be done. So that's a thing. That's the area where I think people really
You
get
think there's understanding
confused.
could be gained from that though? I was
Yeah,
kind of curious
no,
of
no,
that
no.
myself.
There is very much understanding that can be gained for there, because this is the area where I think people get confused, is because what they do is a lot of people try to tie in the idea of religion, which tries to understand the human mind of why, like, we like this specific song, so it's trying to do this thing, but then it also makes claims of objective or universal truths. And then once it does that, it just falls to shit. So these are things that should be separated. Like, we can understand the way the universe works, but that doesn't negate our own experiences in life. Like, that's a thing I think people really need to separate.
I think like what you mentioned was artistry of people taking in things in a creative way. I was thinking that the reason why people are artistic is because it's just a natural evolutionary thing that we developed in wanting to take in the environment and have understanding and manipulate the environment in a way of adapting to it. And it's kind of like artistry. Maybe that I was just always trying to understand like why people are what's behind, you get what I'm saying, what's behind being artistic.
Yeah,
And I never really
like,
got the attraction to that, but I'm thinking like it's just a natural human thing to want
like,
to
artistry had
to
nothing to do with
but I'm
like
just saying I'm
like
just thinking that
somebody
there's a
saying we
connection
want
between that
it.
and science and creativity.
Oh, no, no,
Like
no. Like what I'm saying, Nivek, is like with art, like it's not like
okay.
it's not like all of a sudden people said we want this. So you said all of a sudden people just said, hey, we want art. That's not the way it works. Like, I mean, like it is just natural. It's a part of us. It's a part of
And,
every
and I'm thinking
single.
that natural is that natural part of us is like it has to do with taking in the environment and wanting to
Exactly.
create it in a way that's in an adaptive way. So creativity is kind of important when it comes to wanting to adapt.
Yes.
You get what
Yes,
I'm saying?
absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like that drawing of creativity might be because our brains naturally evolve that way in wanting to be creative and
It's
in
100%
changing
because
the
our brains
environment around
naturally
us.
evolve that way. Yeah, it's 100% because our brains
So
evolve
you
that
could,
way. Yeah,
because you can
yeah,
see in our tech, we put creativity in it. You get what I'm saying?
yeah. Well, that's
It
that's
doesn't,
what
we don't have to
well,
do that. It can be an ugly piece of shit, but whenever we create something of a car,
that was my point of like differentiating between um, scientist and um, God, why am I forgetting the name right now? Scientist and
Artists, painters.
engineers. So like engineers do the same thing. So engineering is basically what you're doing is you're taking science to create something. So engineering is the like highest form of art in the scientific
Yeah.
realm, I guess you could say. So
Stop, but we
basically what
always do it. We always put it at an appeal to the things that we
oh, oh, well,
scientifically create.
no, well, that has nothing to do with anything, because there are still like, you know
No, like a visual appeal is what I'm
songs.
saying.
Yeah, visual appeal, but that's not what
Why
I'm talking
do
about.
we
Like,
do that?
so think about the guy who first realized that there's electromagnetic waves. Now take that all the way to the guy who was an engineer who created uh, like alarm systems. So basically what they did is for an alarm system is you just have two magnets, and as long as those magnets are connected and they're sending a signal back and forth, that current is there. Once that door is opened, that current is gone. So this is what I'm talking about. This is what engineers do is they take these understandings of science and they can figure out ways to use it in a useful way. Like, so it's like every single like window, door, alarm system, the way they work is you have two magnets, and once you set your alarm, like the magnetic charge is going and it recognizes, okay, that other magnet's there. Once that door is open, it recognizes, okay, that magnet's gone, and it triggers the alarm. So
But what I'm saying is that
that
we
figured
add
that out,
artistic
that was not
creativity.
science. Yeah, but the guy that figured out how to make a door alarm like that had nothing to do with science. That was artistic creativity. He didn't figure out the science behind electromagnetism. He took this thing that we already knew, same thing that like a painter would take the colors red, blue, and green. So he already had these colors, and he just made something from it. That's what engineers do. Engineers are not scientists. Scientists discover things about the universe. Engineers are the same thing as painters or as musicians. That's exactly what they do. And that's and when you if you ever try to like
Okay, they're artistic
conflate,
scientists in a way.
yeah. So if you ever try to conflate technology to science, you're in the wrong, because technology is a matter of engineering, which is a matter of artistic expression. Like somebody's figuring out something some way. It just depends on what palette that they're using. Some people might have paint. Some people might have strings on a guitar. Some people might have code. Some
And they
people
might
might
have
have
steel and wood.
exactly. So it's all the same thing. So science, you have to break it down to strictly just being able to understand the way the universe works. Any technology, all technology is based off of engineering. And then you have, like I said, then you have technicians. So you have scientists, engineers, and technicians. Scientists like figure out like the fundamental things, the way the universe works. Engineers take that information, make something out of it, and then technicians are the ones that make it work. And that's fundamentally true across every branch that I've ever looked at. Because you could even look at, like, say technicians for, like the realm of like painting. So you have like entire companies where the only thing they do is work on specific pigments or figuring out the perfect brush texture for like painters to paint with. So these are the people who are going to be the technicians, you know.
And Naranja, you come to a conclusion
Yeah,
on this
basically,
your
I
summary.
think the engineering part of what Scott is saying is true, because I can relate to this, because I work as a software engineer, so it's like I know what he's talking about, and yeah, I agree with that. And furthermore, I think I have a meeting to get to at 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna sign off.
Okay then.
Yeah, man.
Take
Okay,
care.
bye. It was fun talking to you guys. Yeah,
You too, Dershan.
All right.
yeah.
Near,
Bye.
oh, it's not Nirshan. It's near
Naranjan.
Naranjan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Man, we never got up much past like more than 4 watchers tonight. That's interesting. Most times on the YouTube channel, it's like up to like 300. Trav, Nivek, you guys there?
Yeah. I guess everybody came to their conclusion.
Oh, what's that, man?
I guess everyone came to their conclusion.
What are you thinking after what I said though? Like, do you see where I'm going? Of why I sort of separate the idea of like science, engineering, and technicianship? Why I separate that out?
Yeah.
Because I even do the same thing even with like music, like there are certain people in music who like are coming up with ideas that people have never done before, and then you have writers who are gonna like turn that into a song, but then you have like technicians. So like technicians in music are people that you see at like orchestras. These are people who their entire life, all they've done is trained to play sheet music, and they can nail it perfectly. Those kind of people are very, very rarely write good, new, interesting music, but they're amazing at just nailing whatever's written. So you have like a difference of technicianship versus creation.
Okay, I got you.
I mean.
Yeah. It's art.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much all technology is art. When I think of science, I think of like, yeah, real esoteric shit.
Okay then. All right then. I'll catch you later.
Yeah, man. Have a good night, dude.
Take care.